I'm Ashton Addison from BlockWest Capital for Investment Pitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Sheldon Dearr, the technical lead at Octopus Network. Sheldon, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Ashton.
You're very welcome. A lot going on in the Substrate ecosystem, and it can get technical, but we're going to break it down today in layman's terms for people to get more familiar with Octopus Network, how you're interacting with the Web 3.0 ecosystem, and then we'll talk about the intricacies and what it looks like moving down the road. But for now, let's start off the conversation with just a little bit about what is Octopus Network, how does it function within the blockchain ecosystem, and then we'll dive into the details.
Excellent. So Octopus Network is a Web3 interoperability protocol that helps projects launch their own blockchains, specifically application-specific blockchains or Appchains. So if you're familiar with Web3 at all, you can think of us like an infrastructure provider, but also that we provide a suite of solutions to help people gain easier access to Web3 technologies. And that doesn't mean anything except technologies that they're building, that they're operating, that they can borrow from different places to make new things.
Okay, great. Now let's break that down a little bit further, Sheldon. It can be confusing for people that are just getting into cryptocurrencies and they're just starting to understand Ethereum, and then they see the Substrate ecosystem and how it differs, and there's layer 0 and the infrastructure. You know, people don't really need to know exactly how it works, but maybe you can give an overview of like how Substrate functions and how you're actually helping projects launch into Substrate.
Sure. So Substrate is different from Ethereum in a number of ways, but the one that we probably want to focus on is the way that the software is packaged together. So when you're working with Ethereum, you're working with the Ethereum virtual machine, and that means that you've got a sort of suite of functions, you've got a bunch of different options, and that's what you can use. It's a can work for everybody concept just based on the existing suite of EVM. Substrate is much more customizable. It does include some EVM compatibility, which we'll discuss later, but Substrate has some different advantages, but the main components that make it different is at the low layers of the tech stack, it's customizable, based on what you're trying to achieve. With Ethereum virtual machine, there's a little bit more effort required sometimes, especially when you're doing things that are either off-chain or interacting with off-chain operations. And Substrate is really, really excellent for that. Off-chain workers is a concept we could touch on technically, but from a layman's perspective, Substrate is a software suite of modularized sort of options that you can use to build your own system. EVM is more of a menu. Hey, I want to use this. I have this option in front of me. I'm going to pay the gas costs, and then, you know, I'm able to afford whatever the network is able to offer me instead of choosing what my network will do.
Definitely. And so with Substrate, and you sort of hinted at the beginning there with Appchains, with the customizability, you're essentially creating your own blockchain that in terms of Ethereum, if you have a token that you've launched, you're sort of parented under the Ethereum network, and there's limitations there. But from what I understand on Substrate, the customizability is essentially you're creating your own blockchain. Is that right?
That's correct. The blockchains that we help launch are sovereign, and there are components of integration that we support, encourage, help with, but these are independent blockchains. They're commonly labeled as side chains, and I try not to use this language because that implies that they're consensus or they're sort of their lower layer components that make them work, that they're integrated with the other chain, the main chain, in this case, Near protocol. That's not the case. These Substrate blockchains are completely independent.
Okay. And from what I've seen of the Polkadot and the Kusama ecosystem, where projects try to do a parachain lease offering or a fundraising, and then that gets them a slot on Polkadot, is that related to, because Polkadot's running on Substrate, is that related in the same way of how they're launching projects through Octopus?
No, this is one of the points where we specifically differ. So Polkadot is designed to be the flagship place where very, very large Substrate products will exist and interoperate with each other. Kusama is more of the bleeding edge of experimental, very similar, but also in production. It's not a test net. Octopus Network doesn't want to use the the nomination process in this way because we think it forces too tight of a bottleneck. We want to make sure that there's an ability for people who do good work to be able to join. And that means instead of saying, hey, we have a limited number of slots, we're going to let the market decide what they're worth. We'd say instead, okay, there's a collateral purpose that the token will provide. You have to be able to achieve a certain amount of collateral to be reasonably secure, but that doesn't mean that you have to, win over somebody else necessarily. You don't have to compete with capital to get infrastructure. Your capital itself becomes your infrastructure.
Very cool. And yeah, from what I understand through the parachain lease offerings, there's only a limited amount of spots that are possible to actually launch, a Substrate blockchain. Is there still that limitation if you're going through the Octopus Network route, or can you essentially launch an infinite amount of Substrate blockchains?
We have the capability to launch an infinite amount of Substrate blockchains. It's a little bit technical, the reasoning why, but I can summarize it pretty easily. At Polkadot, you have a relay chain, a bit of infrastructure that all parachains are supposed to interact with in order to communicate effectively with other parachains. We don't have this type of infrastructure model. We have a relay protocol instead. So if you eliminate that barrier and then look at the scalability of Near protocol, that's effectively how you get to infinite app chains. We can talk about the longer story for that, but that really is part of the research we did before hanging our hat on Near protocol. And that just means that when we grow large enough on Near protocol, it's very likely that we will have our own shard.
Very cool. And I do love Near protocol. We've had them on the show a few times this past year. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that grows out. And now as well, I'd love to just get more of a snapshot now that we have all the background information on how it functions and how it differs, about where Octopus Network is at right now in terms of working with projects that are launching chains. Have you already worked with a lot of projects that are already live, or where exactly is that at?
So right now we have 2 projects that are live. We launched our mainnet October last year, and then within just over 30 days, the first app chain went online. So DEIP is the third app chain that should be coming into election status relatively soon. That has slowed us just a little. It's not something that we're trying to hide. DEIP is a massive suite. So it took us longer than expected to audit DEIP, but that audit is nearly complete. So coming back to your question, there are 2 app chains running today, and their services are moderately unique. Their concepts are very well audited in Web3, and by audited in Web3, I mean that they have a unique fairness model that we scrutinized, and they were just out of the box already ready to do those things. We didn't have to push them. That was part of their design, and that's part of the way we see app chains, is that they need to put fairness forward. That's part of the logic of Web3, instead of the sort of legacy mindset of Web2, where people are the product. People need to be the community, the participants, the equity holders, et cetera, stakeholders, if you will.
Definitely, yeah. I think people are waking up to the models and which one is more beneficial, and I'm sure we'll only see continued growth in Web3. Now, I wanted to just backtrack a little bit and just talk about Octopus Network as a whole. What is with this octopus? Is it some marine biology project, or eight limbs? Why is it called Octopus Network?
So there's a few reasons that we will marinate about and kind of have fun discussing about, but realistically, at a grounded level, Octopus Network has its tentacles, if you will, in multiple ecosystems, multiple technologies, and multiple business operations. So being a relatively large and varied entity, there's a lot of different components that we have our tentacles in. For instance, we'll be looking at a couple of different things with a grant program. We already have our Accelerator program in its second batch. We're building an education program that's just coming out of pilot. That's more the business octopus, if you will. If you want to think of it more as a technical structure, which I tend to do, you can think about the different ecosystems we participate in, which is chiefly Near protocol, the Cosmos ecosystem, and Substrate, as we were discussing.
Very interesting. And I like that you mentioned the Accelerator program there as well. I feel like these networks To help them grow, you almost need accelerators, incubators, grants, as you mentioned as well. Can you talk about the Accelerator program? What are you interested in accelerating, and are you already working with people at early stages?
Sure. So, like I said, we're in our second Accelerator batch. So we have already gone through the first one, and we had a showcase day at the end of that 3-month period. The results of that is that we introduced some winners. One of them is becoming an app chain that would be Fuzotao. So to be clear, our accelerator is not only designed for app chains. A lot of people kind of expect that, oh, don't you want to accelerate projects for your ecosystem? Of course we do. But we know that the knowledge on our team and the knowledge just in our organization in total, it spans a lot more than just Substrate and these other ecosystems that we've discussed. So effectively, we encourage anyone to join as long as their product is, reasonably ideated, prepared, you have sort of a base layer of business components in place to start the work, then just about anyone is welcome to sit with us. This is part of our trust model, that we're establishing ourselves, that we're showing people that we're effective, that our knowledge is valuable, that our help is valuable. So this is very, very different from an incubator. And there was some misunderstanding about this in the past. Incubators and other, common financial devices that you see in sort of the startup world, they require some sort of equity or stake. People who enter our accelerator program, we charge them nothing. We don't accept any of their equity. It's an operational risk to us. We literally can't take it on. And then they have the opportunity to get in front of our community and win some money at the end. $50,000 is the prize. The mindset of the accelerator is to help the entire Web3 space grow. And if that means we're helping a Binance Smart Chain project or someone build their own chain that isn't Substrate, that's perfectly fine with us. We're still happy to demonstrate that our knowledge and our help was useful, and that we're genuinely here to help build the space.
I really like that approach, Sheldon. And they say, blockchain, even if they're a different chain, everyone needs to work together, because it's just so small and early compared to the traditional financial world and the real world. We're still in the early adopter phase. So I like those principles going forward, and I think that's attractive and will open the doors for even more projects to innovate. So great work on that. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. I want to know a little bit more about the Octopus Network itself and how that interacts with the app chains, and more specifically as well the governance and the governance token, because I know that there is an Octopus Network token and cryptocurrency as well. Can you talk about the token, how it functions in the ecosystem, and how it provides value to everyone in the ecosystem?
Sure. So the OCT token is effectively a utility and governance token. I try not to refer to it as a cryptocurrency, even though it's a common, sort of understanding of the space that all tokens are currencies. The purpose of our token in governance and with utility is to provide economic collateral and security, governance, and ultimately enablement to larger governance structures. So not just governance at the ground level, but governance at a higher level, meaning that eventually the Octopus Network team's goal is to sort of transition out of the need for our existence. That doesn't mean that we would leave the project. We would just become participants on the same level as the public. And that's our sort of end goal of being universally fair and not needing to, control the bridge ourselves, or, stranglehold innovation or decisions about parameters like staking. Yeah, definitely, like a real democracy and decentralization, and not having that influence to make the executive decision on the other projects. That's great to know. Thank you for clarifying that. I know that you guys are pretty early on, only having a few app chains launched so far, and that the vision is very grand and the plan is into the long-term future. And I want to talk about the long-term future now. I'd love to hear your insights in what do you see as some of the key factors to success in how Octopus Network is going to grow from where it is now to 5 years from now and beyond. So operational scalability is something that we're coming into our own on, because we're just out of our, what I would call, initialization phase. So, we only went mainnet 2 quarters ago, or like a quarter and a half ago or something like that. The reason I say that is because we have so much to coordinate for app chains and so much value that we want to gift them to enable them. We're working on refining and streamlining that process. That's something where we pretty much all know, hey, this is what needs to happen, this is what we want to do, but the way that it gets done and the sort of workflow and logic is something that we're going to continue to refine and iterate up to the point where we, go full DAO, if you will. Mm-hmm. So that's one component because, like I've mentioned in passing before, part of our responsibility is to help Appchains with marketing, with community. We act as the validator of last resort for the first 100 Appchains. Mm-hmm. So not just being a safeguard at a technology level, but acting as a safeguard as a business partner is also something that we're really key on. We all know that how we want to do that. It's the mechanics that we're working through. So scalability or sort of realization of the dream long term, that's one component of it. The other component is being able to sort of meet the market where it is. So we have a really intelligent market positioning thanks to our CEO, Louis Liu. That's really anchored around how wonderful Substrate is and how hard it is to be a parachain. Mm-hmm. So making it easier to join Octopus Network in every way, shape, and form, whether that's enabling our EVM template, which is recently merged into our master repo on GitHub, or just the general onboarding and the process that Appchains need to go through to get started. That's the main thing that is journeying forward. And the easier that gets, the more you're going to see other organizations saying, okay, it's worth it for me to go down this path because so much is already streamlined. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty good portion of it. But that is, again, about meeting the market where it is today, where there are hundreds of sort of orphan Substrate projects that are either running a testnet like a mainnet, where a testnet has a economic value attached to it from trading on real markets, mm-hmm. or blockchains that are sort of orphaned, trying to make contact with venture capital or other organizations so they can reach that higher level of operation. We are communicating with these projects. We're helping others pivot to those types of designs, mm-hmm. but the ability for the market to trust us and recognize our value, our presentation of that value, these are medium-term goals or short-term goals, and they really all fall into, hey, we're trying to build trust in the community so people can understand that our purpose is to help.
Incredible. I like it. And for startups and people that are looking to get involved with Octopus, either through the acceleration or through some of these other programs that you mentioned, what is the first steps that they need to take to reach out to you?
So transparently, Accelerator program is just on our website, accelerator.oct.network. You can apply to the Accelerator at any time. There's no real prerequisites except that you have some base level of preparedness and that your ideation is complete and that you're beginning to work on the idea. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I think I missed the other component of your question.
Just for the acceleration, for the grants, and all the other facets of how startups can get involved with Octopus Network.
So economic preparedness is the main one that I've ended up coaching on. Participation tokens, governance tokens, tokenization of time or liquidity, or a unified DAO operation. There's a lot of different things that sort of non-Web3 crypto projects need to consider, mm-hmm. and that's a lot of what's been going on in the background with some of these conversations, where we know that a startup, for instance, might have had a very simple, hey, we're building a product, it's going to create this profit line, and then that will help with other components of the business. We have to help them complete that circle of value and say, okay, the customer's value that they get out of interacting with you can't just be being a customer. They also need to be a participant. They also need to have a reason to come back besides, oh, the product is great. So that's kind of a base layer. But that's not a limit to being in the Accelerator. That's more of a economic target that we're coaching people on so that they can be Web3 applications and not necessarily just blockchain applications.
Mm-hmm. Ben, thank you for that extra information. Now, for just the viewers that are looking to learn more about Octopus Network and participating in it, not as a startup, but just as a crypto holder and getting involved, what is the best way for them to learn more?
So our website is oct.network. It's got a trove of information. There's quite a lot to go through, but if you'd rather sort of go more into the technical details, you can look at docs.oct.network, and also take a look at mainnet.oct.network. Mainnet.oct.network is our UI. It's our dashboard. You'll see the bridge there. You'll see the Appchains there. That's where voting on Appchains takes place. That's where you can see their process as they go through auditing, booting, and launch. So those are really the three main sites that I'd recommend following up on. But if your interest is more just sort of exploration and not necessarily direct participation, our Medium also has a lot of great content, thanks to our chief editor, Zan.
Amazing. I will leave all those links in the description box below for the startups, for the viewers, and everything else. Thank you so much, Sheldon, for coming on, explaining all of this, talking about Octopus Network. I'm really looking forward to seeing it grow and following along. So let's definitely follow up in the near future.
It's been a pleasure, Ashton. I'd love to come back another time and be happy to have some exciting updates for you.